Key African markets like Nigeria, Angola and South Africa are increasingly being scrutinized by foreign investors. Consequently, increasing number of Chinese, Malaysian, Brazilian and Indian companies are expanding rapidly on the continent. To analyze the trend, Alpha Professional Network, in collaboration with Oxford University China-Africa Network, organized a conference with a theme, Emerging Powers in Africa. From Oxford, Claude Acheba reports.
Change is taking place in Africa. New players are shaking things on the ground. Increasing numbers of Chinese, Malaysian, Brazilian and Indian companies are expanding rapidly in Africa. But China continues to lead the way. Talking at the Alpha Professional Network and Oxford University China-Africa Network conference, many entrepreneurs recognise that local businesses are still facing many challenges.
For example, for a small entrepreneur to produce goods and he needs electricity, for him to be able to compete with a Chinese counterpart, who will spend less than 30% of what an African entrepreneur would spend. So it becomes hard for the African entrepreneur to be able to compete in the global marketplace. Other traditional challenges, but we are determined as entrepreneurs from Africa to change this, the traditional corruption, the bureaucracy and the limitations in international, to be able to take part in international trade.
To play a part like China in the international landscape, the continent has to learn from the superpower and produce goods to the rest of the world.
It's not the same scale, but I do believe Africa can do the same thing like China do last 30 years. For me, Africa is very, very similar like China 15 years ago, something like that, 15 years ago, because Africa have different strengths than China. China is a country don't have any resources. Only resources China have is 1.4 hard-working people, but educated, of course. And in Africa, you have rich resources, and you have very green, a lot of projects, the best project to have a synergy with the rest of the world, especially with China. China and Asia. China consumes, for example, 50% of iron ore, cements, and all these kind of commodities. And Africa have plenty and just need capital. China have 2M, market and money.
But the idea of this first conference in Oxford is to give an insight of the emerging African market.
We were talking about today, the demographics in Africa are the best in the world. 50% of the population under 21. So you want to be investing in companies, local companies or companies that are quoted in that both local and multinational companies that are quoted locally that are going to benefit from the rise of both that young population and the growth of the middle class.
It is a reality. Africa is growing. China, Brazil and India know it. Soon the rest of the world might follow.